welcome to another session of India Employer Forum's Samvaad, our dialogue series where we bring together leaders to explore the changing world of work. So, I am Bala Subramanian A, Senior Vice President and Business Head at Teamly Services Limited, who's the knowledge partner for IEF, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's conversation with Ms. Vandana Sheth, and we'll be discussing about India as a powerhouse for global capability center. So before I introduce the speaker to you, just giving a little bit of context here. For those joining us for the first time, the India Employer Forum is a not-for-profit community that discusses, understands, and documents the many aspects of employment, employability, and ease of doing business. As we look ahead to India at 100. TeamLease is the knowledge partner, like I said earlier, providing expertise, research, and insights while supporting IEF's events, webinars, and initiatives such as these. And just to set the context about the topic for today, India is no longer about low cost operations, it's actually about high value innovation. So, from a back office hub to a global powerhouse of people and technology, India is redefining jobs, skills, and the future of work. Over the years, our workforce and talent landscape have evolved significantly. One of the clearest examples is this shift uh, in the rise of global capability centers or GCCs. According to NASSCOM, as of early 2025, there are over 1,800 GCCs employing nearly 1.9 million professionals. So these centers are creating jobs, driving skill development, and contributing to economic growth and technology transfer across the country. What stands out really is India's move from focusing solely on operational efficiency to creating real value, being widely recognized as the GCC capital of the world. It's not just a title, it's a responsibility. It involves
Absolutely.
nurturing talent, driving innovation, and building a sustainable and inclusive future for global business. With a talented pool of young professionals, India is quickly emerging as an innovation hub. Hybrid work models, diversity initiatives, and upskilling in areas like AI, cybersecurity, and blockchain, combined with strong industry academia partnerships, are preparing employees to be future ready. So, joining us today to discuss this transformative shift is Vandana Sheth, Executive Director, Global HR Capability Center at HARMAN International. With over 24 years of experience across industries and geographies, Vandana is a seasoned strategist known for setting up global HR shared services and leading transformational journeys. Passionate about DEI, that is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and mentoring next gen women leaders, she has been instrumental in driving cultural transformation across global delivery ecosystems. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Vandana. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you so much. Likewise, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, especially, from an industry perspective, to share the experiences that I've had and, where we stand, today. Because personally speaking, 2.5 decade of experience in operations, I would say my career really started with business process outsourcing, what was erstwhile called as the BPOs. And then, the evolution of the shared services happened. And today we are at the evolution of the Global Capability Center. The name in itself, is very, evident when we say it is capability center compared to shared services. Now, shared services was really about delivering transactions. Uh, you know, so there were defined SLAs, metrics, and then you keep churning out those transactions. You are defined by volumes. But today, when it comes to the capability center, right, it is really not about filling seats. When we talk about, let's say, 1.9 million individuals with over across 1,800 companies, but it's really about, the value that we are creating. We have shifted from just being transactional, as you rightly said, into areas which bring in innovation, research, product development, development of softwares, AI. I think that is where we are actually talking about skills development. Today we have upscaled ourselves, right, to be able to deliver those skills. And that is also a predominant reason why it seems to be a very bright future for the young professionals in India, because we are working on our skills.
Thank you so much for that opening pitch about GCCs. No, you're right. BPO now sounds like a very degrading kind of a term, doesn't it? I mean, business process outsourcing. Oh my God, it's almost as if we are just small cogs in a huge piece of machinery. But yeah,
Sure.
global capability center sounds more empowering, right? So there is
Absolutely.
that. Wanted to also pick your brain on now with yes, the GCCs operating at the scale that they are. How is this creating new opportunities for young professionals and shaping the country's employment landscape? So just a bit of a number that I want to throw at you. We have nearly half a crore people graduating every year in India, and more than half of them find it very difficult to land jobs, right? Skilled jobs. So, in that context, how do you really think GCCs are creating opportunities for young professionals?
Let's go a decade back, right? Or 10 to 15 years back. India's always had engineering, it has been a hub for engineers. But really, if we speak about how many opportunities were there within India, it was only, in hardcore plants or, for software engineers, probably some software companies. But then, they really had to look at opportunities outside of India, right? But today, when we talk about opportunities within India, are huge. Why? Because the global organizations are looking at us from the skills inventory that we possess, right? Because we have world class, skills being available today, which are being made available to the students through colleges, and obviously they bring that to the table. And these jobs, when they are, offshore to India, there is so much of a talent pool availability in India itself, where earlier it was very limited. One, I mean, for every 10 professionals, probably one would land here, right? And the rest would have to go look elsewhere. So I think that itself is a testimony that, you know, the placements happen, through colleges. It's no more a shortage when it comes to talent. An individual who's talented to get through a job in India, if you have those skills which are needed in today's GCC industry. Because again, GCC industry, like I said, is not limited to just HR or finance. The pool is just widened itself, the scope is just widened itself. Like research and development is probably something which is probably not existent in India earlier, and today India is being looked at, research and development.
I think a couple of really interesting points that you made there. One was skills inventory. I really like that term. I haven't really seen that being cited very often. That's one. And secondly, as you said, it didn't really start with the technical workforce initially, right? It was more of HR, finance, operations, admin, maybe, and stuff like that. So it was more of an extension of the traditional ITES slash BPO kind of workforce, just that it branched out into more functions, maybe. But hardcore technical development, R&D, etc. GCCs for industries such as even pharma, for example, right, coming into
Absolutely.
India. I mean, that's revolutionary, So I
Yes.
completely understand what you're saying and where you're coming from. That's fair. So that brings me to the next question, Vandana. I mean, when organizations take on more complex and high value work, maintaining strong performance becomes very critical. So, in this context, what strategies are organizations adopting to boost employee productivity and performance management to ensure that teams are able to deliver impact?
Yeah. See, to me, I think what is very important is, as a leader, one has to be very closely aligned to the business outcomes, to the enterprise outcomes. It cannot be that we call ourselves a capability center. It could be for HR, it could be finance, or it could be IT. You cannot isolate yourself from the organization's direction, organization's visions, organization's performance, and the business metrics, right? How you are able to attach to the business outcomes, that becomes the real performance assessment, irrespective of whichever function you are within the organization. And that is future looking, because Otherwise you're confined just to your own metrics and you're not really collaborating. Now what happens is when you are aligned to the business outcomes, you have to collaborate, you have to work with each other across departments, cross departments. And that is something very critical to be able to deliver the outcomes from an organization perspective, and
Yeah.
not just limited to your own function.
That's how it should be in an ideal world, Vandana. But what we have seen in several instances is that some people come back and they push back, basically saying that why are you measuring me basis that while it's not really in my control? I have visibility only into this. So why don't you give me
So,
something that I can control? How do you handle that?
see, so that to me is goes a little more deeper in terms of the culture of the organization, right? So, for anything, the culture of the organization is extremely critical. The cultures which drive you as a business, that is more critical. I mean, I need to be aware of, if I am in automotive culture or if I'm in a banking industry, I need to be aware of what drives that industry, and what culture is needed within the organization to work towards that shared vision. Other See, when when there is a lack of direction towards the culture that we want to embed in the organization, is when the pushbacks really come in. What becomes very critical for leaders is to take along the employees of the organization and show the direction towards that vision. And I'm sure, I don't think there'll be any pushback at all when you understand what that really means, coming together as an organization, right? Because
Yeah.
today we are living in a very volatile world, right? The global economy is, there are macro changes happening, and you need to be prepared as an organization, because what you're doing today, in the next 10 days it's something entirely different which is happening, and you need to be able to adapt yourself. So having that culture of oneness and having a shared vision is extremely critical.
Yeah.
Hence you start working on business outcomes.
No, I agree. It's downstream from having that unified culture so that people are able to rally around the common goal for the organization. No, I'm with you on that. Would love to now move on to some personal experiences you've had in terms of driving DEI initiatives, mentoring next gen women leaders, which is something you've stated that you are very passionate about. What kind of programs have you created and seen success in, and what kind of practices you think certain companies are doing which are counterproductive in driving DEI? Would like to hear both.
The DI in itself is also evolved, right? I would say that it really has been very dependent on the organizations that I've worked with as well. Every organization has a very different approach towards DI, right? Uh, uh, there are organizations where it is about women empowerment, organizations where it is about, promoting, specially able colleagues. So I would say that for me, it is really what I've really been passionate about is women development. I wouldn't go very far. It would be really the ones who work with me very closely in my, own scope or my functional scope. And, from my experience, where I'm able to mentor them, guide them, from my own experience, from an industry perspective, the coaching which could be given, I would say that is what I've been practicing. It is not really about just one area, I would say,
Hmm.
because for me, DI no more is specific to gender alone, right?
Yeah.
That has also evolved in itself.
Yeah.
It is DI could be anything, right? Where you're looking at different demographies, different skills is also DI. Uh, so DI is a very wide area.
Thanks for stating that, because unfortunately the word D, that is the letter D, that is diversity, has become synonymous with more women representation, right? I mean, that is just one small sub aspect of what diversity can mean to an organization. So as you rightly said, there are several organizations who just hire lateral talent from within their own industry. They are not open to looking at talent from outside the industry at all. Several traditional industries operate in that way. That could be diversity to hire someone from outside the industry and see how it goes. That's that, as you said, that's
Yeah,
one. Hiring from a different demography, hiring from a different geography, hiring uh, you know, let's say for example, a higher percentage of freshers maybe, and putting them through your management training,
absolutely.
graduate training
DI is
programs, whatever.
wide,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
See,
yeah,
to
yeah,
me, even moving away from a tier one city and looking at a tier
yeah,
two or a tier three is DI,
yeah, yeah.
right?
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. So in that sense, out of these several aspects of diversity that is there, Vandana, what have you actually found the most success in implementing, and why? Why did it work?
Again, I will be very honest. Not one approach I would say is only been successful. Like
Yeah,
in one of the organizations where I got the opportunity to set up their HR shared services, we really, and that was around COVID times, right? So we really looked at diversity in terms of demography, in terms of the cities where individuals came in. So and we were in this work from home environment then, right? So but then it really opened a very different perspective, because the entire transition was to be done completely remote, but at the end of it, the knowledge transfer, everything, the transition, all of it was done remote. But that did not really, it was not a limitation. Plus, we got this bigger canvas of individuals across India, right, who were a part of the team. And I think that was very successful. I would say, because otherwise, what happens is when you are in a certain city, let's say Chennai, right, or Bangalore, 60 to 70% of your team is in and around Bangalore, or let's say, if we go a little wider, it would be within South India, and then a few from the rest of India. So you're actually limited, right? But from an organization standpoint, for me, I had the best talent, and there was no limitation when you go across. So I would say that probably at that point was very successful. Today, obviously, it is shifted because we are more into a hybrid approach, and that also comes with its own benefits, right? That hybrid work model is also a DEI to me, because you have the flexibility to be able to navigate, through your own priorities, and still be, able to manage
yeah. No,
work
absolutely. I
life
mean, hybrid
balance and
work is
all that.
also a way of equity, right? No question
Yeah.
about it. And GCCs now have the flexibility of being able to hire from across the world. I mean, why should you have a person in that GCC? You can have work
Yeah.
being driven from the GCC, but the people don't physically have to be in it at all, right? That's something. Is that a philosophy you've adopted,
Absolutely.
or do people have to be in it?
Not really, right? See, to me, the moment you say GCC, the very first word is global, right? First, you
Mm.
come with a global mindset. Second, you look at how you prepare yourself for having that global mindset, which means that you'd go through a cultural orientation as well. Then you are open to, time zones as well, right? So when that really happens, I don't think there is any limitation at all. But then the moment you say it is global, it really means global, and how you prepare yourself to being global.
Yeah, no, well said. Global means global, right? Take it literally. Why do you
Yes.
have to restrict yourself to that center? I mean, forget about the last word, look at the first word. No,
Yeah.
fair. That brings me to my last question, Vandana. So, what I'll break this into two parts. The last question, essentially, I wanted to ask you about is what are the skills you think are going to be most in demand in the next, let's say, 3 or 5 years? I know it's difficult to predict the future, but still looking at the trajectory, right? One, you guys are at the not the cutting edge, but the bleeding edge of innovation. So you will have some visibility. That's one. And secondly, how do they prepare for it? And I'm asking this second part of the question as to how they can prepare themselves to skill themselves in that direction, because academia unfortunately plays catch up with industry, right? It's never in sync. There's always a lag. But you're also, it's encouraging to hear from you that institutions are partnering with companies to also sort of foster those kind of skills. I would like to understand, when you hire freshers, I'm assuming you do you really find a significant skill gap between where they are and where you want them to be? If yes, how do you address them? That's part two. So part one first, I would love to hear from you as to what are the skills you see being big in the future.
The trajectory, the futuristic trajectory, obviously, is something for which we need to consider the current happenings. Now, what is happening? There is a disruption which is getting created by technology, by innovation, right? And this is going to continue. This particular thing is not going to change, and it's only going to evolve more and more, and that's what has happened historically as well, and that's how it should happen. There will be evolution of technology, there will be, so to complement that, you will need to get more and more innovative. So technology, innovation, and for me the most important, that human touch, right? That human intelligence that you bring along, these three components have to marry each other, you know because that is very critical. So if we talk about today's freshers, or today the ones who are still students in the making, and who are going to be future leaders for tomorrow, that emotional intelligence has to come along with the orientation that they are going through in their own academic institutions, right? Academic institutions, like you said, yes, are putting in a lot of efforts to see what is happening in the industry outside or in the world outside, and how they are able to build curriculums towards it. But what is most critical is how they apply their emotional intelligence, to what is needed, because that is something which is not going to which is very intrinsic in nature.
This part two of the question, which is, do you really find a significant skill gap in terms of freshers? At least maybe laterally you may not, but in terms of freshers, what degree of skilling do you need to do before these freshers become productive, Vandana, at least in your setup?
I wouldn't say there is a huge gap as such,
Hmm.
uh, but yes, there is a certain generational gap which you see in terms of expectations from a Gen Z, and probably who they are working with is a Gen X or a millennial. That
Yeah,
is probably the bigger gap which
yeah,
needs to be worked upon by either sides. It is not
yeah,
one side effort. So I don't
yeah.
see gaps in skills.
Okay.
The gap I see is there where
Yeah,
a millennial or a Gen X
right.
has to adapt. If you want to bring the best out of a Gen Z. Now,
Yeah,
yes, the effort probably required is more at this end, because you're the
yeah,
current leaders, and you're the
yeah,
one who is responsible to make those future leaders happen, those future scientists, those future entrepreneurs. So we carry that responsibility. Hence, we should be a lot more adaptable, I would say, compared to because we are going to wear that hat of a guide, a coach, a mentor. So then, for all good reasons, we need to be the drivers of that engine.
No, it's really interesting to hear from you that there isn't even so much of a gap in terms of skills as it is there in terms of cultural fitment, orientation, and things of that sort. But that makes it easier, but also tougher to solve, right? Because skilling is more straightforward, it's objective. You know that you have a particular solution which will work for pretty much everyone. But if it's more of a fitment challenge, then you may have to come up with a custom approach for everybody, right?
Absolutely,
Because you cannot
absolutely.
have a one size fits all. How do you do
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
So, do
See,
you have any sort of mentoring or buddy kind of system, or is it just the regular?
no, in every organization, at least global organizations, you definitely have, programs where for new hires, for freshers, where they go through a comprehensive training, on the job training from a functional perspective. And then you go through behavioral trainings from a culture standpoint of, how you embed them in the culture, and the values of the organization, how you are guided by the ethos of the organization. So there is definitely comprehensive training available, at every stage for a new joiner.
So that brings me to the end of my questions. Is there any closing statement maybe that you want to make, Vandana, and then we'll call it a wrap?
See, from a closing statement, I would only say one thing, right, which is applicable today, it was applicable yesterday, and will tomorrow, is have that curiosity mindset, have that appetite for learning, because that shouldn't stop at any stage, right? Because you would only evolve when you have that appetite for learning more and more, and have an open mindset, right? Because if there's one thing which is really constant, is change, right? And we go through changes like every in today's context, it is like every day. So how resilient you are. So a lot of resiliency has to be built.
I think some of those things are timeless, right? Having resilience,
Absolutely.
being able to adapt to a particular organization, having the right kind of culture, etc.
Yeah.
So, despite the shift from BPO to GCCs and probably bigger in the future, these things remain timeless. So that's very interesting to hear.
Because
So,
they become your
yeah,
personal traits, right? At one
yeah,
point, what really starts, maybe in a professional way while you were very young, at over the years, it becomes your personal trait. Only for you to realize that yes, this is the person you have become, and you would be surprised and sometimes very happy to know that yes, I'm very happy with the way I've evolved. Though at that point probably you were highly uncomfortable, but then when you look back you see that wow, I've
yeah,
transformed. So you have to go through that uncomfortable feeling probably at every stage, and then just for you to look back and thank that yes, this helped transform me.
yeah, yeah. Perfect. No, I think uh, on that note, thank you so much, Vandana, once again for joining us. It was really insightful to hear your commentary on what's happening in the GCC space in India at large. Let's just hope that this continues to be a great source of not just any kind of employment, but high quality employment for India's youth. And I mean, kudos to you for being in charge of driving this movement in India as well. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thanks, Bala. Thank you so much.